Ambient, early morning insects, a soft hiss of wind through motel blinds. When dawn came to Raven Hollow, it came shyly, thin gray light sliding under the curtains like someone peeking in. Eli hadn't slept. The camera sat where he'd left it, lens cap on, battery light blinking its quiet heartbeat. He kept staring at it until the first bird began to call. He showered, packed his equipment, and stepped outside. The air smelled of wet soil and rust, and the motel's neon sign, now silent, looked gentler in daylight. Across the road, the diner's door was propped open. Inside, Laura was already setting up tables, humming a tune that didn't seem to have a melody. Camera, tracking shot following Eli crossing the street, ambient, footsteps on gravel, faint hum of refrigerator from diner. "Morning," he said. She looked up. "You made it through the night." "Shouldn't I have?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Not everyone does." "Coffee?" He nodded, sat at the same booth. Outside, mist was lifting from the hills. "Busy town," he said, glancing at the empty street. "Everyone's out at the fairgrounds. Preparations for Founder's Day." He frowned. "Fairgrounds?" "Didn't see a sign coming in." Laura poured coffee. "We don't put up signs anymore." Outsiders kept coming. Ambient, low hum of light bulb, faint creak of door opening. A man entered, a tall figure in a sheriff's jacket faded almost white. His badge caught the morning light like a mirror. "Morning, Laura." "Sheriff Calder," she said softly. "Coffee?" He shook his head and turned to Eli. "You the photographer?" "Yes." "Eli Merrow." Calder studied him. "Merrow. Haven't heard that name in a while." Eli waited for him to explain. He didn't. "Anything I should know before I walk around town?" Eli asked. Calder tipped his hat back. "Just stay inside after sundown. Streets get confusing." Laura laughed too loudly. "Oh, Sheriff loves his ghost stories." But Calder wasn't smiling. "See the fairgrounds if you like," he said. "People there will tell you the history. Might even let you photograph the old carousel, if you ask polite." Camera, close up on Eli's hand gripping coffee cup, ambient, chair scrape, bell jingle as door closes behind the sheriff. Eli finished his coffee, thanked Laura, and stepped into the light. The day had brightened, but the town still felt muted, colors slightly drained. He followed Main Street toward the outskirts. Houses leaned close together as though whispering. Porches sagged, curtains fluttered though windows were closed. Ambient, crunch of gravel, distant hammering from fairgrounds. At the edge of town stood the fairground gate, paint peeling, one hinge broken so the arch read "Welcome O Ravenhole OW." Beyond it, stalls stood half-assembled, their canvas sheets breathing in the wind. Children's voices drifted faintly from somewhere deeper inside. He raised his camera, took a shot. The click echoed too loudly. When he lowered it, a woman was standing beside the gate. He hadn't heard her approach. "Morning," she said. Her dress was old-fashioned, the kind you see in century-old photographs. "You must be the artist." "Photographer," he corrected gently. "Same thing, really. You capture what the rest of us overlook." She held out her hand. "Marjorie Calder." Eli hesitated. "Related to the sheriff?" "Everyone here is related to someone," she said, still smiling. "Come. You should meet the committee." Camera follows them through the gate, ambient, wood creaking underfoot, carousel chains rattling. Inside the fairgrounds, several townsfolk were raising a tent. They worked in silence, movements perfectly in rhythm. Each turned to glance at Eli as he passed, then returned to their task. Marjorie led him to a table covered in maps, photographs, and a large leather-bound ledger. She flipped it open. Inside were black and white portraits, hundreds of them, arranged by year. Under 1965, Eli froze. The face staring back from the photo looked almost exactly like his own. Ambient, all background sound fades, only the faint crackle of paper. He whispered, "Who is that?" Marjorie traced the name beneath the picture with her finger, Elias Merrow, town photographer. Missing, 1966. Eli stepped back, pulse hammering. Some joke? Marjorie's smile didn't falter. Founders' Day celebrates those who stayed, and those who came back. Camera, slow zoom on Eli's face, ambient, wind gust through tent, flapping canvas, faint children's laughter stops abruptly. He looked around. Everyone had stopped working. Every head was turned toward him. In the stillness, a carousel horse creaked and began to sway on its chain. Cut to black. Ambient, single piano note, sustained. Ambient, low wind inside tent canvas, faint clink of a carousel chain. No one in the fairground moved. The morning air, still cool from the night, seemed to thicken around Eli as every eye fixed on him. For a heartbeat he thought they might not be breathing at all. Marjorie Calder was the first to move. She closed the heavy ledger with a careful press of her hands, as if sealing something alive inside. "Old photographs do strange things," she said, her voice even. "The light in this valley bends. Sometimes it makes a face look familiar." Eli tried to speak, but his throat was dry. He reached for the book again. "May I see the rest?" "You will," she said. "Tonight, at the gathering. The town likes its guests properly introduced." Camera, slow zoom on the ledger, ambient, pages whispering as they settle. The townspeople began to move again, as if released from a queue. Hammering resumed, ropes tightened. A child began to hum the same tuneless melody Laura had been humming earlier. Eli turned away from the table, pretending to adjust his camera. He took a quick photo of the ledger before Marjorie could stop him. The flash caught her face half-lit, eyes wide. Ambient, shutter-click echoes, distant thunder roll from the hills. Marjorie's smile returned. "You really shouldn't use flash. It wakes things." "Things?" She didn't answer. Instead she called to a boy near the carousel, "Caleb, show Mr. Merrow the archives. He's got a historian's curiosity." The boy nodded, motioned for Eli to follow. He couldn't have been older than 14, hair the same wheat blonde as the dried grass around the fairground. His movements were deliberate, like someone copying how a person should walk. Ambient, footsteps on gravel, metal squeal of carousel chain fading behind them. They passed the main tent and came to a small structure at the edge of the grounds, a shack with windows boarded from the inside. A rusted sign above the door read "Town Records, authorized only." Caleb produced a ring of keys far too large for his pocket. He selected one, old brass worn smooth by decades of use, and turned it in the lock. The door groaned open. Ambient, hinges complaining, sudden hush as they step inside. The air smelled of paper and damp plaster. Shelves lined the walls, heavy with boxes. Dust motes drifted in the thin slant of light from a cracked pane. Caleb pointed to a table in the center of the room. "Ledger's copy is here. Every name that's ever lived, or left." Eli set his camera down, opened the top book. Each page carried names, dates, and notes written in neat fountain pen script. His own last name appeared more than once. He ran a finger along the entries. 1894, Thomas Merrow, surveyor. 1932, Eleanor Merrow, teacher. 1966, Elias Merrow, photographer. Missing. Below that, a blank space. Then, faintly penciled, 2025, Eli Merrow, arrived. Camera, tight close-up on handwriting, ambient, clock tick that doesn't match real time. He stared. "Who wrote this?" Caleb shrugged. The town keeps its own records. Always has. But this was written today. The boy's eyes flicked upward, expression unchanged. Then the town must have known you were coming. A chill traced Eli's spine. Who told you to bring me here? Caleb smiled for the first time, small and off-center. No one tells anyone here. We all just know. Ambient, faint echo like footsteps in another room, though the shack is small. Eli turned toward the sound. Is someone else here? Caleb didn't move. Just the record keeper. He doesn't like to be seen during daylight. Eli's pulse quickened. Record keeper? Every town has one. Ours keeps the stories tidy. Before Eli could respond, a file box toppled from an upper shelf. Papers scattered like pale wings. In the middle of them lay a photograph, a man behind a camera tripod, standing in the same room, angle identical to where Eli now stood. Eli set off again, forcing his pace steady. The path ahead divided in two, one track leading back toward the fairgrounds, another toward the cluster of houses he'd seen earlier. He chose the houses. Ambient, crunch of footsteps, distant crow calling once. As he approached the first porch, he noticed details that hadn't been there before. The same cracked flower pot sat on every step. The same curtain fluttered in every window. Even the number nailed to the wood, 6, repeated on each door. He tried one handle. It turned easily. Inside, the room was his motel room, identical. The same curtains, same suitcase on the bed, same folded napkin on the table, don't stay after dark. He stepped back outside. The air shifted, suddenly warmer. Across the street, the diner's neon flickered to life though the sun was still shining. He could see Laura through the window, pouring coffee for no one. The clock above her head read 6:47 p.m., again. Camera, slow dolly toward diner window, ambient, neon hum building. He raised his camera and took a picture through the glass. The shutter clicked. The preview appeared black for a moment, then resolved into an image of himself standing outside the diner, only in the photo, Laura was sitting across from him, smiling. He lowered the camera. The diner was empty. A single drop of rain hit his wrist. Then another. He looked up, the clouds above were motionless, gray but unbroken. The raindrops seemed to fall from nowhere, hanging briefly before touching the ground. Ambient, soft patter that never grows louder, wind whispering, go back, barely audible. He started walking again, fast now, toward the motel. The streets curved where they hadn't before. Buildings slid past like scenery on a track. When he reached the corner, he saw the motel sign ahead, yet it faced the wrong direction, letters reversed as if seen in a mirror. He stopped in the middle of the road. His reflection stared up at him from a puddle that hadn't been there a moment ago. In the water, he was still standing, but his reflection raised the camera first. Ambient, gentle hum of motel neon, faint rain tapping on the sign. Then silence. The power went out at exactly 7 p.m. Eli didn't notice at first. The television screen dimmed, the hum of the fridge died, and for a heartbeat the town seemed to hold its breath. Then the quiet spread, like ink bleeding through paper, until there was no sound left at all. He set his camera on the bed. Its red recording light flickered once, then went dark. Camera, slow zoom on Eli's face, lit only by the motel's emergency lamp. Outside, the rain had stopped. But the pavement still shimmered wet, reflecting faint motion that didn't belong to wind. Eli moved to the window. The street lamps glowed faintly, then one by one blinked out, each pop echoing across town like small, distant gunfire. Within seconds, the entire valley fell into shadow. He picked it up. The man's face was half in shadow, but the outline was unmistakable, his own. Ambient, silence, only the faint hiss of wind through cracked pane. He lowered the photo. Caleb was gone. Cut to wide shot, empty shack doorway swaying open. Eli stepped outside, heart thudding. The fairgrounds were empty now, tents abandoned, tools scattered. The only sound was the creak of the carousel turning slowly in the wind. Ambient, wooden groan, single note of calliope music faint in distance. He looked back at the shack. On the door, fresh chalk letters had appeared, "Welcome back, Elias." Camera, slow zoom, ambient fades to silence. Ambient, late afternoon wind across empty fairgrounds, faint rattle of carousel chains. Eli stood on the packed dirt, breath visible in air that shouldn't have been this cold. The sunlight was still high, yet the colors of the fairground had dulled, as though someone had drawn a thin sheet of gray over them. He looked back toward the shack. The chalk letters, "Welcome back, Elias," were still wet, the white dust drifting like ash. His fingers itched to photograph them, but the weight of the camera felt heavier than before, as if it knew what it had captured inside. Camera, slow pan across deserted tents, ambient, canvas flapping, distant metal clang. He started walking toward town. Gravel crunched under his boots. Each step sounded just slightly out of rhythm with his own movement, as though an echo was following a half-second late. The main gate appeared ahead, the warped arch reading "Welcome me O Ravenhole OW." He passed under it and exhaled with relief. But 50 paces later, when he looked up again, the same gate stood in front of him. He stopped. Looked behind, another copy of the gate there too, identical, both ends of the path leading through the same opening. Ambient, low wind deepens, one wooden sign creaks. He turned off the trail, cutting through tall grass toward a small ridge that overlooked the valley. The ground underfoot changed texture, soft dirt becoming old planks, as if an unseen boardwalk ran beneath the weeds. He crouched, brushed aside the grass, and found wood nailed over more wood, stretching into the distance. Every nail head was rusted, but none looked aged, they gleamed faintly, freshly driven. A faint melody reached him then, slow, broken notes like a carousel organ trying to remember a song. It came from nowhere he could see. Camera, wide aerial of Eli turning in circles, ambient, melody stops abruptly. He spoke aloud, voice thin, "Hello?" The sound carried farther than it should have. It rolled down the slope, echoed back in a slightly different pitch, as if someone had repeated the word from another hill. He pulled out his phone, no signal bars. The screen's clock blinked 11:47 a.m. and refused to change. Ambient, soft electric pops fading, then distant dripping water. He opened the window. Cool air poured in. From somewhere behind the buildings came a low creak, wood shifting, as if a door were opening in the wrong house. Then he heard it, a faint mechanical whir. He turned toward the far edge of the motel parking lot. The carousel, the one from the fairground, was spinning again. Slowly. Lights flickering on its horses like fireflies gasping for breath. Camera, wide shot, carousel glowing faintly in dark mist. Eli grabbed his flashlight and camera, stepping out into the night. The beam of light caught the road signs and a faint figure at the end of the street, a man in a black coat, standing perfectly still. He lifted the flashlight. The man raised his head at the same time, though his face stayed hidden under the brim of a wide hat. Eli called out. His voice came back delayed, repeating from the man's direction a second later. "Who are you? Who are you?" He took a step forward. The man mirrored it, same pace, same posture. Ambient, faint static, almost inaudible children's laughter woven through wind. Lightning flickered once across the sky, just a flash, no thunder. For an instant Eli saw what the man was holding, a ledger, bound in leather, covered in dust. And then, dark again. Eli blinked, and the man was gone. The carousel had stopped spinning. But its lights stayed on, burning steadily now, brighter, painting the motel walls gold. He walked closer, heart hammering, camera ready. A name was carved into one of the horses' necks. The letters were jagged, fresh. E. Marrow. Eli's hand trembled. His last name. He stepped back, and the ground beneath him gave a dull crack. He looked down. Beneath his feet was not gravel but wood planks, the same weathered boards from the overgrown ridge earlier. They stretched out under the carousel, connecting everything in the town like veins. Camera, overhead tracking, the town faintly glowing with the outline of connected planks beneath its surface. He turned to run back to the motel, but the neon sign there had changed. The letters now read: "Check out, 11:47. The same frozen time. Inside his pocket, the phone buzzed. Screen cracked. No signal. Just a single notification. One new video saved. Blackout_0001.mp4. He opened it. The footage showed him, standing at the window, only in the reflection. The man in the coat was right behind him. Ambient, soft wind. A single bird call. Then silence. When Eli opened his eyes, sunlight was streaming through the window. He sat up slowly, blinking hard. His camera lay on the bed beside him. The motel room looked normal. Too normal. The lamp was steady. The television hummed softly. The digital clock on the nightstand flashed 6:48 a.m. He felt as though he'd been awake the entire night, but he couldn't remember a thing after watching the video. Camera, gentle pan around room, steady handheld, faint dust in light beam. Eli got up and opened the door. The parking lot was empty, his car gone. Only the carousel stood in the distance, frozen mid-turn, its horses now pale and colorless, the gold stripped away. He took a step outside. The asphalt shimmered, but not with water. It looked melted, as though something hot had swept across it during the night. He lifted the camera. The screen flickered once. Then a new thumbnail appeared, footage he didn't remember taking. The timestamp read 2:13 a.m. He pressed play. The lens pointed at the motel hallway. The lights there were out, but a faint glow pulsed from the far end, someone walking toward the camera, carrying the ledger. The figure stopped. Looked directly into the lens. It was Eli. Ambient, low-rising hum, pulse-like rhythm. He dropped the camera. It hit the floor, still recording. The image split briefly, static lines forming faces in the interference. He picked it up again, staring at his reflection in the black lens. His pulse slowed. He needed answers. Camera, tracking shot, Eli walking through empty streets toward the diner. The diner was open. The neon buzzed softly, its pink light flickering in rhythm with his heartbeat. Laura stood behind the counter, stirring coffee. Only this time, she wasn't breathing. Her eyes were open, fixed on the doorway. A faint smile pressed at the corner of her mouth. Her hands moved in slow, automatic circles, stirring an empty cup. Laura. No answer. He stepped closer. Her skin had a waxy sheen, faintly gray. On her forearm, faint writing appeared under the surface of her skin, like ink rising through paper. He leaned in to read it. He came back. Camera, extreme close-up of the writing as it fades away. The air thickened. The lights dimmed for a second, and when they returned, she was gone. The cup sat motionless, steam curling upward, still warm. Eli turned toward the mirror wall behind the counter. It wasn't reflecting him. Instead, the mirror showed the diner full of people, laughing, talking, eating. The same townsfolk from the photos on the fairground boards. A living Raven Hollow, untouched by rot or silence. Then, one by one, every head in the reflection turned to face him. Ambient, deep bass hum, whispering overlapping voices. A man stepped forward in the reflection, holding the ledger. He looked like Eli, same eyes, same scar on his temple, but older, tired. The reflection opened its mouth. "You never left, Elias." The glass cracked. The reflection's hand reached through, fingers pressing against the mirror's surface from the other side. Eli stumbled back, knocking over the chair. The mirror went black. Camera, handheld chaos, breathing quickens, light flicker strobe. He turned the page. More handwriting appeared as he watched, forming letter by letter, written by an invisible hand. He reads this line now. Eli froze. The next line formed immediately. He looks behind him. He did. The man in the black coat stood at the chamber's edge. Hat lowered. Ledger in hand. But this time, the face beneath the brim was unmistakable, it was his own. Ambient, all machinery stops. Sudden vacuum of sound. Eli, too, spoke, voice calm, almost kind. "You kept filming. That's why it resets." Eli stepped backward. "What are you talking about?" "The town exists on film. Every time you document it, you give it memory. Every loop makes another copy, another me." Eli glanced at the machinery. The spinning slowed to a stop, the mirrors in the hallway went black. He whispered, "How do I end it?" Eli, too, handed him the ledger. "Finish writing the last page." Eli opened it. The remaining blank space stretched far longer than it should, page after page after page. As he flipped through, scenes appeared on each sheet, every loop, every night, every death. On the final page, faint pencil marks outlined the words "End of record." He looked up. Eli, too, was gone. Only the echo of his voice lingered. "Don't stop recording until it's over." Camera, slow push in on Eli's face as machinery restarts, faint vibration builds beneath his feet. The carousel above began turning again, but now its sound came from below, the entire chamber spinning, gears reversing direction. Eli clutched the ledger and ran up the spiral stairs as dust rained from the ceiling. When he burst through the trapdoor into daylight, the town was gone. Only open field stretched for miles. But at the center of the empty landscape stood a single object. His camera, upright on its tripod, still recording. Ambient, faint breeze, then the click of a film reel ending. He approached. The camera screen displayed a live image of him, but from behind, as if another lens watched through his own shadow. He turned around. Nothing there. Then the camera spoke in his voice. Cut. Cut to black. Distant echo of carousel music. Ambient, soft wind moving through telephone wires. A faint hum of electronics, as if the air itself carries current. Morning light spilled across an unfamiliar highway. Asphalt shimmered. For the first time in days, Eli heard ordinary sounds again, cars far away, the static of power lines, the steady beat of his own pulse. He walked toward the only building in sight, a roadside cafe with a cracked satellite dish on the roof and a faded sign that read, "Live Wire Diner." Camera, handheld, low angle following his legs, the world feels too still behind him. Inside, the radio hissed with an empty broadcast. The waitress behind the counter glanced up, expression glazed but alive enough to move. "You from around here?" she asked. Eli shook his head. "Just passing through." "Lucky you," she murmured, turning up the volume knob. The static shifted. A voice emerged, his own. "Recording this in case the loop resets again. If you find this footage, don't." He froze. The waitress smiled absently, unaware of what she was hearing. The radio dial flickered red for a second, then the cafe's lights dimmed. Ambient, low surge of electricity, cups rattling softly. Eli grabbed the radio and twisted the dial. Every frequency carried the same sound, his breathing, his voice, sometimes whispering, sometimes shouting. He dropped the device. The recording continued anyway, now echoing from the fluorescent tubes above. Outside, phones and parked cars lit up by themselves, each screen showing a frame of the carousel turning. The reflection of that carousel began to spin across the windows of the diner, as if projected from nowhere. Camera, slow 360-degree pan, reflections moving opposite to real-world motion. Eli backed toward the door. The waitress kept pouring coffee, hand trembling slightly. Her reflection in the window was no longer hers, it was his, holding the camera. He burst into the sunlight. Every digital billboard on the highway had come alive. Each one displayed the same feed, a live image of him, standing exactly where he stood. For a second, time stuttered. The image blinked, then the billboard version of him stepped forward while the real Eli stayed still. Ambient, deep bass note, air displacement. The screen cracked outward like glass hit from behind. Light poured through the fissures, spilling into the world as moving shapes, frames of the fairground unfolding, tent by tent, carousel horse by horse. The broadcast wasn't showing Raven Hollow. It was building it. Wood sprouted from asphalt, color bled into the air. The smell of popcorn and rust filled his lungs. He stumbled backward as the entire diner dissolved into mist, replaced by carnival lights climbing toward the clouds. Camera, wide drone shot, highway transforming into fairground halfway through the frame. At the center of it all, one object pulsed, the camera he had found earlier, still mounted on its tripod, lens open, recording everything. Each flash from its indicator light sent another wave of distortion rippling outward. He ran to it, shouting into the wind. "Stop recording." But the camera obeyed something else. Its lens twisted, focusing on him like an eye adjusting. The screen displayed the words. "Transmitting live." He turned, and saw towns appearing on the horizon, mirrors of Raven Hollow spreading across fields like reflections on water. Every broadcast tower blinked the same signal. The ledger in his bag vibrated. He pulled it out. The pages were blank except for one line scrawled across the center. "You've gone public." Ambient, layered radio chatter, voices repeating his own words in delay. Eli looked up. Hundreds of figures were emerging from the forming towns, each carrying a camera, each identical to him. Their lenses all pointed his way. The ground beneath him split open, revealing a network of wires pulsing with light instead of blood, veins of the loop stretching toward the sky. Every screen on Earth could now be a doorway. He shouted into the storm of feedback, "If anyone's watching, turn it off." No one did. Across the horizon, one after another, the replicas lifted their cameras and spoke in perfect unison. Action. Cut to black. The sound of a film reel starting again. Ambient, a slow, distorted heartbeat that becomes the sound of a generator struggling to stay alive. Static hums faintly under the wind. The world had turned into a feedback loop. Light didn't behave like light anymore, it bent, jittered, repeating frames as though reality itself were buffering. Eli ran through the ruins of the highway. The once empty diner was now a warped carnival tent, its red stripes flickering between fabric and static. Every few seconds, the world would flicker black, and in that split moment, he would see them, his doubles, frozen mid-motion, waiting for the frame to resume. He pressed his hand to the bleeding edge of one billboard still stuck between realities. It was warm, alive. Camera, close up on his palm pressing the screen, reflection splitting into multiple copies of his face. He whispered to himself, "This isn't a town anymore. It's a broadcast." He found a small roadside maintenance shack half buried in fog. The door was already open. Inside, screens glowed with erratic signals, dozens of them, each showing a different place, a grocery store, a gas station, a bedroom window, all filled with faint carnival lights. Every place connected. Every signal traced back to the same pulse, Raven Hollow. He approached a monitor flickering in black and white. On screen, a young woman sat by a campfire, talking into a handheld recorder. Her voice broke through the static. "If you can hear this, you're not alone. I'm stuck in the bleed too." The loop spreads through sight, through anything that records. Don't film. Don't watch. Don't even look too long. Eli leaned closer. The woman turned toward the camera as if she heard him. "You're Eli, aren't you?" He froze. The image rippled like a disturbed pond. "You started it again." Ambient, bass rumble, lights flickering in sync with her words. He stepped back, the monitors shaking. Every other screen now showed him inside that shack, in real time, but slightly delayed. He turned to the door. On the reflection of a screen, he could see his own back still standing there, even though he had already moved. The signal wasn't just recording time, it was copying it. He whispered, "It's duplicating the moment." Over and over. Camera, handheld, following him as he digs through an equipment rack. He backed toward the door, but when he turned around, it wasn't the diner door anymore. It was the carousel gate. The sunlight vanished behind him. He stood at the edge of the fairground again. Only now, everything looked newly built. Fresh paint. Bright banners. The scent of popcorn in the air. People laughing, children running between stalls. He blinked in disbelief. The fair wasn't abandoned. It was alive. Camera, wide drone shot revealing bustling Raven Hollow Fair, sound design, distant music box version of carousel theme. Eli froze as a man brushed past him, tipping his hat. He turned to watch him walk away, and saw the same face again, and again, on other people. They all looked like him. Cut to black. Ambient, distorted laughter fades. Ambient, steady drip of water. Faint metallic hum, like a generator running somewhere underground. Eli moved through the fairground at dawn. The laughter and bright colors of the night before were gone again, replaced by gray dust and torn canvas. The whole place looked as if it had aged a century in a single hour. He followed the carousel's wooden floorboards outward, tracing them like a trail. Each plank thudded hollowly under his boots. Somewhere beneath, something was breathing, slow, mechanical, like air pushed through pipes. Camera, low tracking shot along the planks, the focus breathes in and out with each step. At the edge of the fairground, the boards ended at a trapdoor half buried in dirt. A metal plate was bolted across it, engraved with the same symbol stamped on the ledger's cover, a looping infinity, split in half by a crack. Eli knelt, pried the bolts loose with a crowbar from a nearby booth, and pulled the plate free. Cold air poured upward, smelling of damp earth and old film stock. He aimed the flashlight into the hole. Stairs spiraled down, stone first, then wood, then steel. He descended. Ambient, his footsteps echoing, faint ticking grows louder the deeper he goes. At the bottom, he found a corridor lined with mirrors, each one fogged, each reflecting him at a different age. In one, he was a teenager holding a camera, in another, gray-haired and hollow-eyed. In several, he wasn't moving at all. He passed them one by one, breath shallow. The last mirror showed a door behind him that didn't exist in the real corridor. When he turned, the door was there, wooden, carved with the word replay. Camera, over-the-shoulder shot as he reaches for the handle. The door opened into a vast underground chamber. Old carousel machinery filled the space, gears the size of houses turning lazily, cables humming with pale light. Every rotation made the air pulse. On a raised dais stood a long table covered in ledgers. Hundreds of them. Each labeled with a year, starting from 1889 and ending with 2025. Eli stepped closer. The newest ledger was open, its pages half blank. The ink on the last line was still wet. Elias Marrow, entry number 47, awakened beneath the loop. But as soon as the period touched the paper, another line bled through from underneath, replacing his words letter by letter. The town brightens. The screens awaken. He stared, helpless, as the ink rearranged itself like living tissue. He whispered, "It won't let me." Ambient, slow build of wind outside, dust rising off the floor. He flipped another page and wrote faster, frantic, crossing out his own lines. Eli burns the ledger. The lights dimmed. The ledger survives. He slammed his fist on the table. "You're not real." Every monitor in the shack answered back, his own face screaming the same words a heartbeat later. Silence followed, broken only by the soft tearing sound of the pencil dragging across the ledger by itself. "If I am not real, why do you argue?" He sat very still. Then, quietly, "Because I need to believe there's a world outside this page." For the first time, nothing replied. He took that as permission. He began to write again, slow and careful, his handwriting steadier. Somewhere beyond the loop, a man wakes up remembering a town that never existed. He breathes. He chooses not to film. He lets the story rest. He stopped. The radio stayed silent. The air didn't move. Even the hum of electricity paused. He closed the ledger. Camera, slow push in on his face. The relief is real, exhausted, hopeful. Then, faintly, from the smallest monitor, a whisper. "Good. Scene 9 complete." His eyes widened. The voice wasn't the same as before. It was calm, genderless, like a narrator reading stage directions. The ledger trembled under his hand. He opened it one more time. At the top of the next blank page, new text appeared in clean print, different from all the handwriting before. Chapter 10, Upload. Below that, a single question. "Do you wish to publish?" The cursor blinked. Ambient, faint ticking of a hard drive spinning up somewhere under the desk. Eli looked around. The monitors were on again, one by one, showing not the town, but his shack, live. Each feed labeled with streaming metrics, viewers, timestamps, comments appearing in fast scroll. "This is crazy. Who is he? It looks so real. Is this live?" He whispered, "They're watching." The voice from the radio returned, soft. "You wanted them to stay for more stories." He stared straight into the nearest lens. "Then tell me, if I stop writing, do they stop watching?" The voice didn't answer. Instead, the pencil lifted, suspended in the air above the ledger, and began to write the closing line of its own accord. "He keeps writing because the audience is still here." Eli closed his eyes. Camera, slow fade to black, ambient hum flattening into a long tone that finally cuts mid-wave. Cut, overhead shot. He turns the page to a blank one. The graphite pressed against the page made a faint scratch, the sound crisp in the stillness. He wrote slowly. The broadcast ceases. The town goes quiet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air pressure in the shack changed, a soft pop, like the sound when an ear clears after a long descent. Outside, the wind dropped. The world seemed to hold its breath. Eli looked up. Through the cracked window, the fog had lifted enough to show the hills, still, pale, ordinary. He smiled for the first time in days. He added another line. Eli leaves the ledger on the table and walks into the sunlight. The moment the sentence ended, the pencil broke. He blinked. On the monitor behind him, his reflection stood motionless, still holding an unbroken pencil. Camera, tight on screen, reflection slightly delayed, then catching up too fast. He whispered, "No." The reflection began to move before he did. It reached down, grabbed its pencil again, and started writing. Words appeared on Eli's real page in a darker shade of graphite, handwriting that wasn't his. He froze, watching as new sentences formed beneath his own. "The town does not release him. The rewrite loops. He keeps writing because the story wants an ending. Eli whispered, "Who are you?" Ambient. A low hum rises from the radio. His own voice answers a half-second later, repeating the same question. He stood, pushing back from the table, the chair screeching. On every screen, his reflection now stared upward at him, not in sync, but in layers, each version slightly older or younger, each trapped at a different point in the same decision. He ran a hand through his hair. "You're me. Your future footage." The ledger flipped to the first page on its own. The ink shimmered, rearranging into an earlier entry, his own handwriting from when he first arrived in Raven Hollow. Beneath it, in a second, unfamiliar script, someone had added commentary lines, like editor's notes. Eli Mercer arrives at Raven Hollow. Author's note: the arrival must repeat until he accepts authorship. He traced the margin. Author's note. Whose author's note? A reply appeared as he spoke, the pencil moving by itself. Ours. Camera, handheld close-up, lens pulsing slightly with each thud of his heartbeat. Eli sat again, forcing his breath steady. "Okay," he whispered. "Let's make a deal. I'll finish your story if you let me go." The pencil rolled across the page, writing without a hand. "Agreed. Begin the final paragraph." He hesitated. "And what happens after?" The camera cuts. The author sleeps. The wording unsettled him. He didn't like how absolute it sounded. Still, he began writing. The town fades. The screens go black. But as soon as the period touched the paper, another line bled through from underneath, replacing his words letter by letter. The town brightens. The screens awaken. He found a transmitter labeled Channel 0, primary feed. The dials pulsed faint red, like breathing. Next to it, an old analog switch was engraved with the words, "Reality Delay Control." He hesitated, then flipped it. Everything stopped. The world exhaled in silence. No static. No doubles. For the first time since the fairground, the air stood still. Camera, slow pan around the silent room. Then, faintly, a whisper from the radio behind him. "Did you really think you could turn it off?" He spun around. The voice wasn't from the monitors. It came from the ledger in his backpack. He pulled it out, the cover now pulsing faintly, veins of light crawling between the pages. The ink moved like fluid. New words burned into the paper. The author cannot stop once the story begins. He stared, confused. Author? As he spoke, the radio behind him shifted channels by itself, voices overlapping, repeating fragments of his sentences. One of them said, "You wrote us, Eli. You filmed us into being." He stepped back, shaking his head. "I didn't, I just found the camera." The ledger's pages flipped on their own, revealing sketches, maps, shots, scenes, all from creepy small town. And at the bottom of one page, written by Eli Mercer. His blood ran cold. Cut to close-up, his reflection on a monitor speaking slightly before his real mouth moves. He watches, realizing that the broadcast isn't only transmitting, it's predicting. Every reflection shows what he's about to do. He tests it. Raises his hand. The reflection follows first. A 2-second delay in reality. He understands the horror now. The signal wasn't replaying the past. It was pulling the future forward. Ambient, sharp crescendo of reversed static. He looks out the window. Across the hills, the towns are multiplying, lights spreading like infections. Above them, the sky itself has a faint texture, as if the world is being recorded from somewhere higher. He whispers, "Someone's still filming." The voice in the radio responds, quiet but direct. "You." He stares down at the ledger again. The next chapter title bleeds into existence across the paper. The air smelled of iron and dust. Somewhere outside, a transformer clicked, a slow, mechanical heartbeat. Camera, close shot of Eli's eyes, red-rimmed but alert. The pencil trembles slightly. He whispered to himself, every story ends when the writer stops. But the ledger didn't look finished. Its pages shimmered faintly, as if the words beneath the surface were waiting to be born. He drew a line under the last sentence written in the night. The author cannot stop once the story begins. He muttered, then maybe I just write it backward. Ambient, low hum of electronics. A monitor glow softly pulses in the dark. The shack is empty. No wind, no movement, only the quiet mechanical breath of machines still awake after the writer is gone. On the desk, the ledger, closed. Next to it, a computer screen shows a single window. Uploading, creepy small town, Final Cut.mp4, 99%. A small progress bar creeps forward 1 pixel at a time. Camera, slow dolly in. Dust floats through the beam of light from the monitor. The hum changes pitch, just slightly. Static crackles. For a second the progress number jumps backward, then forward again. A soft voice, half sleep, half echo. Almost there. Cut, close-up of the screen. The bar reaches 100%. The percentage freezes. No confirmation. Only silence. Eli's chair is empty, but his reflection flickers faintly on the dark glass, a ghost of light caught between frames. A system prompt appears. Would you like to share this file publicly? Why? The cursor blinks. Then, by itself, the Y key presses. Ambient, faint modem tone. Outside, dawn widens, birds stutter and loop the same chirp. The upload begins to seed across networks, small green dots spreading on a map, phones, laptops, televisions, places with names that fade in and out. Each dot pulses with the same heartbeat rhythm that once filled the fairground. A new window opens automatically. Streaming preview, live. The playback starts. We see the same image the audience is seeing now, a screen inside a screen inside a screen. Camera, infinite regression, reflections nesting until the image becomes texture. Voiceover, soft, almost tender. If you can hear this, it means the upload worked. The voice pauses, the hum lowers to a whisper. They said stories end when the writer stops. But stories like this, they only rest between viewings. Another pause. The monitor flickers once, then steadies. Someone always presses play again. Cut, montage, quick flashes of ordinary life. A phone on a kitchen counter lights up on its own. A cafe TV momentarily shows a still frame of the shack. A teenager scrolls past a thumbnail labeled creepy small town and hesitates. A comment counter ticks upward. All of it silent, realistic, mundane, yet each device holds the same frozen frame, the ledger closed on the desk. Back inside the shack, the monitor emits a single tone. Text types itself across the screen. Upload complete. Viewers connected, 1. 17. 38. The numbers rise quietly. A final line fades in beneath them, white on black. Welcome to Raven Hollow. The hum drops out. Just silence. Then, one more line, almost playful, almost kind. Are you still watching? Cut to black. The sound of the hard drive clicking off.